let's be real, most of these essays you're going to write, you're going to read about them and do the research for a couple of days, and then you're never going to think about it again. And I got some hate mail, sometimes genuinely hateful, sometimes playful, making fun of me for being the guy with the stack of books on camera. But for all those research assignments, again, it's not necessarily the amount of time you do the writing. From the day of the assignment, I would get the books, I would have the books, and I would live with the books until the assignment was done. But I mean, the ultimate reason to have that lead time, to not do it, 2 weeks is not enough, to do it on the day they hand you the assignment, is so that you can drop the course.
So when I was in college, most people that I knew wrote their essays in an overnight, like, mad session until right before the due date. So you recently were talking about how you got good grades in university courses, and you said that on the first day when you were given the syllabus, you would go to the library, look at the books, and start thinking about how you would finish the assignments.
Right.
And that is basically the ideal way that you should approach a course, that you should approach any assignment. You should think about it at the beginning of the term, and, you know, throughout the term, be thinking about how you're going to formulate a research paper or an essay of some kind.
So you seemed really surprised when I said that. I mean, whether or not that's how you seemed. You seemed surprised when I just said, yeah, the same day the teacher handed me the piece of paper with the assignment, I would go to the library that day, normally immediately after class when I got the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I would start physically stacking up the books to write the assignment.
Because it's like what the professors recommend. Like, they're like, you should start thinking about this now. And
it's
like,
not rocket science.
Nobody does.
Right? But in terms of...
Sorry, I shouldn't say nobody.
Right.
Most of the students that I talked to, they thought I was being like... They thought I was being really proactive because like 2 weeks beforehand, I'd be like, okay, I need to actually make a first draft.
Right.
And I know, like, you tend to write things and... You know, you go with one of the first drafts, or you don't really do
I can
much
do all
editing.
the writing in one night, but writing it should be the final stage of the process, right?
Right. For me, it's more of like I have to write a lot of, like I have to write a first draft and then do edits over and over and over again for me to actually feel comfortable with it. Like one of my professors early on told me that the secret to good writing is rewriting, and for me that works. I know it's not the case for everybody, and like you're just really well spoken, and like you're really like. Right. You know, when you write, it comes across really well.
Well, in some ways, you know, the essay that brought us together, so it's a very long essay about this war that took place, or civil war in 1920, a massacre of a village. So it's an interesting historical and political event. But that essay, you know, I did basically all the writing for that in one night.
Yeah.
I mean, if I really got detailed, there's one section of it that was written on a separate night. But to a remarkable extent, that was written in one night.
To me...
But... writing is the final phase of the process, right? It's not like the reading was done in one night. It's not that the research was done in one night, right?
Right. Yeah, to me that's really impressive that, like, you just have, you have a really good memory. So, like, after you read something, it's easy for you to not only summarize, but, like, form a coherent and cohesive opinion, that's interesting, you know.
Well, okay.
A lot of people, like, at least for me, like it's something.
She's biased. I mean, she's in love with me. But you make a totally good point. But like, my point in this video is not to talk about like the unique advantages I may have in writing an essay. It's basically to talk about the elements of my approach that other people can do too. So I'm just saying, but I mean, like, not everyone is going to have that kind of memory. Not everyone's going to have that kind of level of writing ability where you can sit down and do it in one night. But when you talk about the first thing, the significance of going to get the books on the same night you're handed the assignment, or the same day you get the assignment from the professor. So you mentioned your friends regarded you as more studious than they were because you would give it 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, 2 weeks is not enough.
2 weeks to write an essay.
I know. 2 weeks is not enough. Why? Point one, most universities in most of the world right now, they will not have the books you need at the library on paper. They will have to order them from other libraries on most topics. Now, admittedly, if you are doing a first-year essay on Shakespeare, probably there are enough books literary analysis in one stream. It's something really mainstream, something really normal for the discipline. But even when I did some pretty mainstream stuff, like I did an essay on immigration policy in Japan. And I thought, oh, this is Japan's a mainstream country. This isn't like researching Cambodia or Laos or something. This isn't ancient history. This is current politics, the last 50 years. I should be able to get a lot of books. No. So if you're not way out in advance of the topic, your ability to order books in from other libraries, you really can't do it. 2 weeks is not enough, right? If you're ordering interlibrary alone. And as I say, on almost all topics, almost all universities, that is what you're relying on, right? So that's thing one. Thing two is you're giving yourself enough time to make mistakes and to come up with a new topic, or to redefine and redirect your topic. So, you might have had some assumptions like, okay, let's stick with that example. It's a boring example, but still, you're like, okay, I was going to do an essay on immigration policy in Japan, and I assumed I'd be able to find articles that dealt with the relationship between immigration and unemployment. The unemployment rate and immigration policy. And in fact, I can't find anything about that, or the relationship between the two isn't what I expected it to be. So instead, I'm going to do immigration and crime, a change like that. Now, again, it may sound like a small change, but both in terms of the digital resources you need to use and in terms of books on paper, now you need new books. You may need to order them from other libraries. You may need to do new work that way, right? Something people used to make fun of me for, I think you remember this from the old days of my channel, I used to often have a stack of books on camera. There were just a lot of books in the room with me, and I got some hate mail, sometimes genuinely hateful, sometimes playful, making fun of me for being the guy with the stack of books on camera. But for all those research assignments, again, it's not necessarily the amount of time you do the writing. From the day of the assignment, I would get the books, I would have the books, and I would live with the books until the assignment was done, right? So she mentioned, again, this is why I want to jump into you. You said I have a really good memory. I was not memorizing the stuff and the resources I was quoting to write these papers, right? Partly just because my level of interest wasn't high enough. Like, let's be real. Most of these essays you're going to write, you're going to read about them and do the research for a couple of days, and then you're never going to think about it again. I mean, I can stick with the same example. I did learn. I learned something. I learned many things from that research assignment on Japanese immigration policy. But I'm not. I don't regret. Gee, I wish I'd worked harder. I wish I'd committed that stuff to memory. Like, not at all. I would very simply, when going through the books, use bookmarks. I put in bookmarks so I could find the page. I would take handwritten notes also for where I was going to find things in the books. Yeah. And then I would physically have the copies of the books.
Yeah, so, that's pretty much what I did too when I was reading. I mean, right. most of my essays were about literature, so I would just make a note. This is one. One portion of the book that I would like to write an essay about. So I would make notes of that, like on page 42.
Right. He deals with this topic or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So then when I was doing the writing for me, also, I'm just saying, in case you think I have a perfect memory or photographic memory, not for this kind of thing, I would remember, oh yeah, right, that guy says something about unemployment, or that guy says something about crime, let's go and get that, and then put it in the essay. Sure. So I mean, I'm a regular human being. I don't have any kind of great advantage on that level. But the lead time there of living with the books and having the books on your desk, I think that's crucial. And you have to be honest with yourself about how much or how little reading you're going to do too. Having books on paper is a huge advantage over having articles in a PDF format or articles downloaded from the internet. If you have the luxury printing those out on paper for exactly this reason, your ability to rifle through them and mark them and everything. Yeah. I do think the learning process is better on paper, but yes, I also do sometimes just use purely digital editions and make notes based on them. I think you rely more on handwritten notes when you do. Yeah. But I mean, the ultimate reason to have that lead time, to not do it, 2 weeks is not enough, to do it on the day they hand you the assignment, is so that you can drop the course. If for any reason, this is an assignment and you realize you have nothing to say, you realize you can't write an A+ essay, you realize you can't succeed, you realize the professor is hostile to you, because I've dealt with that a bunch of times. A lot of my courses are about politics, and you realize this professor politically really disagrees with what I'm about or disagrees with my approach. They have a bias or an interest opposite to mine or what have you. Or it may be completely personal. I've heard about that in literature courses too. This professor just plain hates me for whatever reason. A lot of them, all of those are compelling reasons to drop a course. because if you have those kinds of factors against you, you can do 10 times as much work, and you're still going to get a B plus or a C plus or an A minus when you deserve a grade in the 90s, or when you're doing as much work as to get a grade in the 90s. So whenever you're in a scenario where you can't win, don't win. Drop the course. Preferably you want to drop it before you have to pay for the course, because there's normally a brief period of time. But again, you would have to make that decision up front, right? Most universities, maybe you have 2 weeks, maybe you have 4 weeks at the beginning where you can make the decision to drop the course, and where you could make the decision to enroll in another course. So that's crucial. You get the essay assignment, you go to the library, you get the books, so you find out what books you can and can't get, and that's going to be linked to whether or not you stay in the course.
Okay, but can you give an example, like, from your past? Because when I'm thinking about, like, some courses that I really didn't like there was one,
right.
I had never read a Virginia Woolf book, but I was like, I've heard that I should read Virginia Woolf.
Right.
She is a great, she has many great works of literature. So I took a class that was exclusively Virginia Woolf books, and I wish I hadn't. It was really just terrible.
What was terrible because of the professor?
The professor was like I had heard many good things about the professor too, like that he was really charismatic, that like his lectures were interesting, and like the essay topics were, also engaging, and so I'm just trying to think, like, when I first started, I looked at the syllabus and I was like, oh, okay, I bought the books like very soon after that. But
what was your was it actually with the content with Virginia Woolf?
Right.
Okay. I mean, look, keep in mind, guys, education is not entertainment. And so look, I mean, there are two things I want to highlight here. One, why do we have this divide between education culture and work culture? If you're at work, it's your job and your boss hands you an assignment, when do you work on the assignment? The minute he hands you the assignment. You start on it that day. But at university, your prof hands you an assignment. When do you work on it? 3 months later. That makes no sense. The same way, this is your job. You're a professional student, whatever you want to say. That's what you do. When they hand you the assignment, you should work that division. But there's also the division between education culture and entertainment culture. And I think in a lot of ways that's looking at a course the wrong way, to say, oh, I hear this is entertaining, the professor is entertaining, or the reading is entertaining, as opposed to looking at, one, what you're going to learn from it, like, what is the educational value for you, and then two, the mode of evaluation. So I can give you a ton of examples of courses I've dropped where it was a no-win situation for me. But one that might surprise you is actually linguistics. So I remember a linguistics class I enrolled in, and if you read the description of it, you'd think, wow, this is exactly what Eisel would like. This is exactly what this guy would want to take. Because I have a lot of interest in language research, including indigenous people's languages, minority languages, language education. There's a lot of things about language that interested me. But there were many reasons why I dropped this course, but it included the method of evaluation. So this is a course that wasn't based on writing an essay. It was based on, you would go home and you would log into a computer and do a multiple choice test and little assignments over the internet and so on. And I sat there and read the syllabus, and I looked at the mode of evaluation. And I always remember there was a girl sitting next to me in class, and she had, some kind of learning disability. I don't know. She was probably something like dyslexic or something. And she was so delighted. She sat there and said out loud in her chair, looking at me, she said, "This is great. It doesn't require any writing at all." For this course. I remember because I was sitting there at the same time looking at the syllabus thinking, I'm dropping this course as soon as I can get to a computer terminal.
I think I would too, because I do really enjoy, I really liked writing essays. So that would be that'd be a shitty course for me.
So no, but look, some people, who's being cynical here? Am I being cynical, or am I being sincere? Because I'm sincerely interested in learning. I'm sincerely interested in education, but I'm also interested in the process and how I'm going to be evaluated, whether or not I can win. So one other example, because it's not all like that. I took a course in, I guess you'd say, philosophy of education or methods of education, right? Again, if you know me or you watch my channel, you think, if you read the description of this course, you think, wow, this is the kind of course Eisel would want to take, that this guy would want to take. And the first day of class, I've never had this happen in a real university class. So I sit down, it's a normal university lecture hall with the desks in a row, and the professor comes in and says, okay, push all the desks to the side and sit on the floor in circles. Mm-hmm. Sit your ass on the floor. There's no carpet. It's not that kind of room. You know what I mean? Sit your ass on the dirty floor in a circle. And already I'm thinking, maybe this time they had to sit like little, preschoolers or whatever, sit in little circles of 5 people. And, there were a whole bunch of red flags for me. The type of assignment that we were supposed to get, there would come in these participatory assignments and so on. And this is, I can understand why they think that's cool. But also, the first question she gave us, we were supposed to discuss it in a group and then give our answer, was to evaluate a certain method of education, a certain style of participatory education, and how effective is it at X, Y, and Z. Now, it was very obvious the teacher just wanted to hear 10 out of 10. This method of education is great for this, great for that, and great for prepping for exams. It was 3 different categories and 3 for exams. And I gave my honest answer. I said, no, I think it's about a 5 out of 10 for prepping for exams. I don't think this is an excellent way to prepare for exams. And the teacher was fuming. She was livid. She was angry at me. And I think every other student in the class was just like, yes, teacher, 10 out of 10. This is the best method for preparing for exam. Nobody else was questioning it. But it's like, okay, I can't have an opinion that much in this class. I'm expected, in terms of the mode of participation, evaluation, everything else. So, these are very, very different. That's why I'm mentioning them from the case. I think the one you already know about was the class on the politics of immigration, where the teacher was basically on that issue was a left-wing extremist. Yeah. She believed all illegal immigrants should be welcomed into the country. Unlimited illegal immigration should be legal, in effect. She took a position. I pointed this out to her in class. I said, if you do a poll, you realize 99% of Canadians disagree with you. Like, we have polling data on these questions. This is political science, right? But where, her political position was biased against me. And I should have dropped that course. I didn't drop that course, and I'll always regret it. I should have. It was a ton of work. There was a ton of work for a hostile prof.
Well, I guess
course.
but
that's content based, not
this I can understand. I've heard a lot about the fact that you've taken classes that are in political science, and I can imagine it's tough to be somebody with an opposing view when the professor is teaching something explicitly political. I did not take any political science classes, and there were very few courses that even the content would be controversial to talk about. You're not gonna have a lot of controversy in a class, even if you disagree with the professor about the meaning of a passage from Virginia Woolf, one of her books. Really, that's not gonna ever cause I don't know. I can imagine that one professor just wouldn't like a certain member of the class, but I just don't. I have not had that experience, so I would have never dropped a class just because of the political stances of a professor or because of, them not liking me. No, I was also, not as, I'm sure you're an outspoken person. So in class, I'm sure you talk a lot.
These classes, okay, but look, so that's another point. I was saying from day one, take out the books. If you're talking about a class that is, a seminar class, a class that has a role for the student speaking, some aren't, some are just a straight theater. You also want to start speaking in class right at the beginning. Why? So that you can make the decision about whether or not you're going to drop the class. And also so you know what you need to know to get started on the research right away. I'm saying research as opposed to writing the essay. I think it doesn't matter if you leave the writing until the last minute. In a sense, so what would you idealize more? There were courses where I wrote it 3 months before the deadline, where I got the books, I did the writing, and the essay was done 3 months before. I've done that. But you can also get the books, do the research, and then do the writing at the last minute. And you'll be relaxed. It won't even be a rush. You'll be like, oh yeah, I've done all the reading, I've done all the research for the assignment over the last 3 months. So I'm 100% prepared. Now I can just relax and write it up. No, I'm writing up something I already know that I'm already conversant in.
Right.
And you probably have a good grip.
Do.
Right. But I've done both. I mean, I've done all these. But the point is getting the book, starting the research at the beginning. But if you think about speaking in class, that's also something you want to do right at the beginning. In a sense, that's your opportunity to test the professor instead of vice versa, not the professor testing you. Mm-hmm. What is this course about?
Yeah.
So look, I don't think anyone would say that succeeding in university is easy. It's not, mostly because nobody explains to you the rules of the game that you're playing. You're expected to come in and figure them out for yourself. However, not failing, not doing badly, that's really a separate, limiting your risk, making strategic decisions about what you study and how you study it, what kind of research you're going to do, what courses you're going to take, what you're not going to take, what compromises you're going to make, right? What if you find a course that on the surface is not interesting to you at all, but it's good for your degree and you can get a good grade in it. There's a separate art of making that interesting for yourself. Because most of these courses, you get to do the essay on whatever you want. So you may think, oh, this is a boring class in terms of what's in the syllabus or what are the assigned readings. But then within that topic, you can come up with, a research question that's interesting to you, that motivates you, that makes it more educational and rewarding for you. So that's on you, to that creative aspect.
That, I felt was kind of unstated,
yes.
And never taught. I mean, I know
sure.
you just said
sure.
that, but whatever.
Sure. Okay, but
I'm really just agreeing with you. I could have made that class interesting if I would have focused on the historical and political things that were happening during the time of when Virginia Woolf was writing, but I knew nothing about it, and the class didn't talk about it at all.
So let's say
it was just totally not interesting to me.
Let's say I was forced to take a literature class like this that I didn't want to take. It didn't happen. Not worth explaining why. But if I had to do an English literature class, I'm really not that interested in English literature. But I could be in a class like that, and I could go up to the professor and say, "Hey, this class is about Virginia Woolf. What I'm really interested in is Asian politics. So here's my proposal. How did critics in Japan respond to Virginia Woolf? I'm going to look at the criticism of, appreciation of reception of Virginia Woolf in Japan. If it was Shakespeare, and it's like, look, I don't really want to sink my time and energy into Shakespeare. What about the history of Shakespeare being adapted and performed in communist China? How was Hamlet performed in Beijing in terms of translation and politics and culture? Now I've got something. Probably the professor is going to be delated too. He's going to be like, "Oh wow, that's different from the other 999 essays I have on Hamlet or Shakespeare."
Right.
They'll probably accept the proposal, and I've created something that positively motivates me and has educational value for me in terms of my interests.
Right.
But nobody teaches you this. In general, unless your parent is me, your parents don't teach you this. High school doesn't prepare you for this. Mm-hmm. How to make reading productive, how to make independent research rewarding, and even, as obvious as it is, how to block out your time, how to get this stuff done. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So look, just end this video by saying, because some people don't know this about me, in some ways my life has been unbelievably horrible and tragic. That'd be a topic for another video. But one of the ways in which my life has been wonderful is that, for me, learning never ended. My first university degree was back when I was a normal teenage age, back in 1997. And then again, whether it's a tragedy or a triumph, I've come back to university again and again. I didn't drop it. I completed that degree, but I've repeatedly enrolled in and started new degrees after that. So I've gotten to rehearse this experience again and again. And yeah, the last time around, this time I did get extremely high grades, except when I was cornered into classes where I just couldn't win. I think that is a topic for another video. Okay, guys, lots of ways to get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Patreon. I have an email. You can figure it out. If you want to talk to me more about Education University, hit me up.
À-bas-le-ciel.